planets are in the man.
Brought to you by Bartlett Tree Experts. Every tree needs a champion. Go to bartlett.com.
Jet streams, perfect air.
And here they are, Peggy Malecki and Mike Nowak.
Good planets are in the man. Right.
And because the beginning of the audio was enough, this is the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. I guess I should say that. Gardening.
I thought it was my ears.
No, I was looking. I was going, oh, the meter's kicking. Okay, what did I do? Well, what happens is when I fade it down here and then I don't bring it up before the next week's show, that's what happens. Hey, everybody. Welcome. Good morning. And we're off to an auspicious start. But
Basil's barking in the background, so he made up for no audio.
So we're going to have Basil in the background. Well, that's good. It's always a good thing when. And let me get my dingers out here. And we've got. Yep.
Got mine.
All right, there we are.
In case people wonder when we say the dingers. There's mine.
Oh boy, I'm going to take a spray paint can and spray that happy face.
I could say, okay, I'll turn it this way.
Yeah, there you go. No, you need the classic, okay? Just the nice chrome kind of thing there.
My classic is sitting in your box.
That's right. One of these, one of the two I've
From
got
last
here.
March, yes.
Is
it's still there, yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay, so that means that
shut up, Wesley.
That's for me. Okay.
No, that's for the COVID lockdown.
Well, all we got to say about our show is
everything's so green.
Yeah, there you go. Mm-hmm. And we're very excited this morning because we're always excited on Saturday morning. I'm always excited just when everything starts running in order. And it doesn't crash and burn. So there we go with the technology. But it's so funny. I take great pleasure these days in watching national programs, live events, and news programs where they have people who come on and they're having audio problems and they have video problems and things freeze. And I just think, okay, yeah. That happens to us too. So
happens to us all. Yeah.
Everybody's dealing with that this year. So on the show today, we're talking gardening. We're talking farming. If you're a brand new gardener because of the pandemic of COVID-19, and you want to join the show, be ready for the 10 o'clock hour. Because we have a couple of gardeners who really started to do this in earnest during the pandemic. And, we've talked about it on the show, and I'll bring it up again when they come on, that we had Chris Beatties from Grower Talks on a few weeks ago who said that somewhere between 16 and 20 million gardeners, there are new gardeners somewhere between 16 and 20 million. Because of the pandemic, at least those by some estimates, and and you sent me a story yesterday I was looking at last night, Peggy, where that's supposed to go up by 50%, maybe.
Yeah. 86% of the people who started gardening last year, based on this one study, say they're going to continue or do even more this year.
So we'll talk about that today too. But at 10 o'clock, we got a couple of brand new gardeners going to talk about their own experiences. One of whom who's a healthcare professional who's been in the middle of this whole nonsense, the pandemic craziness. And I'm really excited to talk to her because she's had some interesting experiences. And another is a friend of the show who's a communicator in the biz with Peggy and me. And she's got gardening in earnest. So that is going to be a lot of fun. So if you have those same experiences, stand by, be ready to tweet us and to to write us on Facebook, make a comment, and
Or
just
on
help.
YouTube if you're watching.
Or on YouTube, and we'll read those on the air because we're very interested in that. But let's start the program this morning with that guy you see down there in the lower left-hand corner of your screen. If you're just listening on the podcast, you can't see it, obviously, but his name is Ariel Pressman, and he is with a group that I just became aware of just a few months ago. It's called the Real Organic Project. And this was, I found out about it. And Ariel, the other day I was telling you I couldn't find that article. I found it. I found the article that had mentioned you, and it was in a publication called Green Talks, which is part of the Ball publication line of newsletters and magazines that they send out. And it was about what you have just done, what you were able to do just a few months ago, which is to put a new label out for farmers, organic farmers who are interested in, I don't know, going to the next level. But here's the problem with that. When I say going to the next level, you're actually going back to the previous level that used to be the standard for organic farms. And then USDA came in and they have their certification project. But you guys at the Real Organic Project looked at that and said, no, that's not what we consider organic. You've let something slide. We're not happy with everything you've done, so we're going to come up with our own standards. So that's sort of the whole thing in short. Why don't you tell me a little bit about the Real Organic Project and your involvement in it, because you have an organic farm yourself, right?
Correct. Yeah, I actually did have an organic farm. I work full time for Real Organic Project now, but I was an organic farmer for 11 years. So I think you got it exactly right with the Real Organic Project. Part of the idea is, some of our standards are actually above what the USDA requires of farmers, but importantly, most of our standards are just reinforcing, what the organic standards are supposed to be. So when you look at the USDA standards, and it makes clear that, by definition, an organic farm should be maintaining and improving their soil. That means, by definition, if you're not growing plants in soil, you really shouldn't be allowed to be certified organic.
Meaning, if you're growing hydroponically. Correct.
And by the same token, if the standards, the USDA standards indicate that, farm animals should have actual regular access to the outdoors, it makes logical sense that, enormous CAFO operations where it seems somewhere between unlikely and impossible that animals would be getting actual access to the outdoors and pasture, and are only really allowed to get certified through some real stretches of logic and legalese, should not be part of the program. So, we've got some standards that are above and beyond, but I always think it's really important to point out most of our standards are just reinforcing what the USDA organic standards have been and are currently supposed to be.
So about 2018, a group of, I would assume, farmers and activists, because there's always activists behind these sorts of things, got together and said, this isn't working the way we look at it because of the reasons you just explained. And you guys put together the Real Organic Project. When did you join the project?
So I joined the project, it would have been last August now. I was farming up until 2 seasons ago, and I'd sold my farm and I was looking for something meaningful to be involved with and a way to continue working with farmers. And I also heard about the Real Organic Project and thought, I've always known there was a problem. I didn't know there were people actually working on a solution. So it felt really exciting to get involved with and see if we can actually create some of the change that we all talk about and we want to see in the food system.
It's kind of interesting because in my readings over the years, and Peggy, I'm sure you've encountered the same thing. At the beginning, when organics became a big deal and became big money, and that's what we're talking about. And big business, right. A lot of folks, that was happening, a lot of folks who were farmers who would stand up at farmers meetings and organizational meetings, whether I guess USDA or Farm Bureau or whatever, and would talk about organics, would be laughed at and sometimes shouted down, and it was a hard beginning. Then all of a sudden, organics are making money, and so big government gets involved, which is the USDA, and has the standards. And now, once you go down that road, things can change, and it's kind of a slippery slope, as you mentioned. You know what I want to show here is the difference. Your folks sent me some photos that are very, very interesting. So, for instance, if you look at this photo, this is courtesy of the Cornucopia Institute and the Washington Post. You look at that.
It's a large CAFO operation.
It's
for
what
those
it is.
who are on the podcast.
But guess what? Look at the designation up in the left-hand corner at the top. USDA Organic. So you're telling me, Ariel, that is an organic operation?
Absolutely. Yeah. Part of what's happened is, there's been some very legalese kind of reinterpretations of the rules. So one way that it was written when these standards were originally put in place, and I think it's important to keep in mind exactly what you said, Mike, that, originally when these government standards were written, the idea that organic would be big business was kind of comical, So the idea at the time, or the thought at the time, was, well, only farmers that are really interested in the spirit of this will be doing it, because there is no big money to be made. So you can understand why there may have been some loopholes that were kind of set up, because nobody thought anybody would take advantage of them. So what you're seeing in these poultry facilities is often what happens is the terminology in the standards is that poultry needs to have access to the outdoors. And if you're a regular consumer, you might go, that sounds pretty good. If you're a lawyer, you might go, well, access doesn't say you actually have to go outside. It just means that you have to have the possibility of going outside. So oftentimes these facilities will just have a couple small doors, only enough for one chicken to fit through. They've been inside their whole life, so they're scared to go outside anyways because there's predators. So they'll spend their whole lifespan literally just inside of a building. Sometimes they'll have access to what's known as a porch, which usually is something like a concrete pad with essentially a screen porch over it. And sometimes they're just allowed to stay inside of buildings like the ones you're looking at. And I think any organic consumer would say, well, I thought the whole reason I'm buying certified organic eggs is because I do not want to be supporting facilities like these. And even though probably the vast majority of farms are doing things the right way, the vast majority of actual eggs on the marketplace are coming from operations like this.
All right, I don't want. And let me show you the comparison. That is USDA Organic, and this photo, courtesy of Coyote Creek Farm in Texas, is a real. I assume this is a certified farm.
Yep. Yeah, it absolutely is. Yep.
By Real Organic Project. It's also USDA certified, but it's and that's where we get to the difference between what we just saw and what you're seeing here. So what you're doing with your label is
and real quick for folks just listening, this is free range chickens out in a pasture.
Thank you. Yeah, this is one of those things like when you do this online and you say, oh, put the alternate type, put a description here.
Put an alt text tag there.
Alt text tag, so that if the picture doesn't
I'll
show
be the
up.
alt text tag this morning.
Thank you, Peggy. You could be the alt text tag. What we're seeing is a picture of free range chickens. They're out, they're in the grass, they're pecking around, they're having a great time. They are not just daring to come out on some little porch in a steel and concrete facility. And as a result, you at the Real Organic Project have deemed this a Real Organic Project certification.
Correct. And I think that the couple big things to notice as you're looking at this picture is, first of all, we've added some additional clarification to some standards to make sure there's less loopholes. So first of all, we don't say that the animals just need access. We say they actually need to be outside. But the second thing is we define pasture, which is really important. So when we're talking about pasture, we're saying that's ground that has at least 50% kind of plants or shrubs or trees growing in it. Because if you don't define pasture, then what will often happen is, somebody can just show up to a dirt lot and say, well, this is pasture. And so this way we can actually, mandate that pasture actually is a real outdoor area that the birds would want to hang out in. And by definition, if there's too many birds, they'll degrade the pasture to the point where we would not consider it pasture anymore. So we can ensure that kind of the soil and the animals are being taken care of really well through kind of this standard and certification system.
And I don't want to go down any rabbit holes here, but when we chatted the other day when we were setting up the connection here, we talked about, and Peggy and I have talked about this in the past, which is if you go to a supermarket, which you go to any store, you go anywhere to buy eggs pretty much, that you're going down a rabbit hole if you're trying to figure out whether they've been humanely raised, whether they're organic. There are so many designations. It's Byzantine. It's a jungle out there, as they say, and it's almost impossible to determine whether the eggs were raised humanely because of the loopholes and the lawyers, as you talk about, what determines a pasture, what determines open space, what determines free range. Sometimes it's good to get lawyers involved, and sometimes it's really bad to get lawyers involved. What are your considerations? As I said to you, the way I look at it to make my determination is I go to the Cornucopia Institute and look at their list. But the problem with that is a lot of the companies that are listed at Cornucopia Institute are not going to be found in the stores in my area. So you're stuck going down the list until you find something that instead of has a 5-egg rating, has a 3-egg rating or a 2-egg rating. And sometimes you're happy just to get that. Yeah.
So the first thing I'd say, obviously, I'll put in a plug for us, is we've got 450 certified farms across the country. We have a similar list if you go to our website, realorganicproject.org.
Okay.
The other thing I would say, though, is when you're looking for eggs that meet your values in the supermarket, I think obviously the best thing to know is if you know the farmer, if you've been out to the farm, if you have a relationship with them, that's always one of the best reasons that we need to support local agriculture is these people are knowable. And oftentimes farmers are willing to have you on their property to see what's happening. Some of these really large CAFO operations, you need a court order to actually get on there and actually see even what the growing practices are. But the second thing I'd really encourage consumers to do is, sadly, you've got to utilize a little bit of common sense when you're purchasing eggs. And one thing that you can see, for example, I know, right? So and I get it. People are busy, but I think one of the things. I know, but one of the things is that although price point is certainly not always indicative of practices, just because it's expensive doesn't mean it's good. Just because it's cheap doesn't mean it's bad. In general, what you can probably guess, though, is that producing these eggs on Coyote Creek, it's going to be a lot more expensive actually maintaining that pasture, letting the chickens out, moving them around, than just having a giant pole barn that the chickens spend their whole life in. So just me as a consumer, one of the things I often do is like, okay, if I see eggs that look good and they're like $3 a dozen, I don't want to say that uniformly means they're produced poorly, but it seems pretty unlikely they're produced up to the standards I'd like them to be, because it's just going to be extremely difficult to do that, utilizing the right practices. So that doesn't mean just go out and buy the most expensive thing you can find, but I think you need to apply a little more rigor to things that
but you know what? But that's a deal breaker for a lot of people. I mean, if you go to a farmer's market in this area, and I don't know what it's like in other areas, if you're getting eggs from folks who are coming to a farmer's market, it's going to be in the $6 to $7 a dozen range. And a lot of people will say, no,
they can't afford it.
I can't afford that. I got a family. It's a pandemic. And yet, during the pandemic, more people than ever have been buying organic. So there's the irony there.
Well, and I think at the end of the day, I never want to make it sound like, everybody needs to make their own decisions on their diet and how that interacts with their values. And even if you don't have the budget to buy everything in the way you wish it was produced, I'd really encourage people, just pick one thing. I know a lot of people have limited budgets right now. A lot of people always have limited budgets. So don't get distressed by the fact that you can't get everything the right way, but at least try to find one or two things that you can, because it really does make a difference. When you go to your local food co-op, when you go to a Whole Foods, they are counting which eggs got bought. And if they start to see sales go up from places like Coyote Creek, they're going to order more. And if they see sales go down, they're going to start dropping them. So again, those of us that I think are lucky enough to be able to afford to buy everything in line with their values, great. But I really want to encourage people, don't get discouraged just because you can't do it all. Doing something makes a really big difference.
All right, let's go to another photo here. This is courtesy of the Cornucopia Institute and the Washington Post. Another USDA Organic certified farm. I believe this is a dairy farm.
Correct. Yeah, this is a dairy facility.
Yeah.
And this is because of probably the investigating the Washington Post did a couple of years ago with Peter Orisky. This is probably the issue in organic integrity that the average consumer is most familiar with. And what you're basically seeing is that, I don't know about this specific photo, but oftentimes these milking facilities will have thousands of cows, which in theory are, eating pasture for a significant portion of their diet. The problem with this is, one, how do you define pasture? But the second is that if you talk to anybody that runs a small dairy, they'll tell you the idea that you could get thousands of cows access to enough pasture to kind of get them out, then bring them back to the milking facility twice a day is virtually impossible, right? Because you got to keep in mind, if you have a couple thousand cows, that land you're looking at right around this facility, that's probably only enough to sustain them for a couple days, if that. A couple thousand cows are going to eat a lot of grass.
Yeah.
So the question is, 2 months from now, where in theory are they eating the grass, and how do they have enough time to eat that grass, walk all the way back to the milking facility, walk back to the field, walk back to the milking facility? It just doesn't pass kind of the common sense smell test of something that could be reasonably happening.
And looking at this in comparison to beef facilities, there aren't even that many cows in here. They pack them in even tighter, it seems to me, in some of the meat facilities with those cattle.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out for consumers that don't know, when you're USDA organic, in theory, any ruminant, so dairy cow, beef cow, sheep, they need to be getting at least 30% of their diet from pasture. So obviously that's not 100% grass fed, but that's a decent portion. And to do that, like when you're seeing this photo, what farmers will often do is they will move cows from paddock to paddock. So the idea is they all go in a small space, they eat a bunch of grass, then they move on to the next paddock either after 12 hours, a day, 2 days, and then they can rotate back there in a period of time once the grass is regrown. But that's an enormous amount of work. I mean, you're moving those cows, some of the very intensive facilities, the really good farmers, there's a lot of ways to do it, but some farmers are moving their cows, 3 times a day to really get the most out of that ground. That's a lot of work that's going to make your product way more expensive than what you see in the store.
And as you can see, this photo is courtesy of Butterworks Farm in Vermont, and it is cows in a real pasture, and there's lots of grass there, and they're not crowded in as much. All right, I want to move on here because we got to get to your symposium that's coming up, but I've got two more photographs, and they relate to the work that you've already done, Ariel. By the way, Ariel Pressman from the Real Organic Project. You can go to realorganicproject.org to find out more information. I think I stepped on you as you were saying that before. Let's make sure people, but you can go to my website, mikenovak.net, and look at the blog post for this week, and all the links are there. Although I just noticed that the links at the beginning of the blog are not in the traditional blue ink. I don't know what happened. They got switched to black, and I thought, wait, where are the links? But if you run your cursor over them, you can see the links are there.
And I put up realorganicproject.org on all of the streams as well.
Fantastic. All right, now look at this. We all love tomatoes.
Yeah.
This is USDA Organic, and it's all indoor.
Where's the soil?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And this is where you come in, because you did this yourself for 6 years. The difference that soil makes.
Absolutely. And not only the difference soil makes for the plants, but understanding that one of the things we're doing when we're organically farming is we are not just growing food for people, we are also improving the soil and the land that the farm is located on for the sake of both the larger environment and the microenvironment that we're storing. And so obviously, if you have a facility like this, where the ground is 100% covered with, looks like white plastic here, but oftentimes it's black plastic. Nothing is happening to the actual soil that's lying under it. There's no amendments. There's no care taken for it. You can't be improving that soil. You can't be working on it. And I think common sense would tell you that the product you are getting is probably not going to be as good as what you'd be getting from an actual soil-grown crop.
But they're not even in soil. They're in some other
Coconut or water or
some medium.
Yeah.
We don't know with that has an infusion of nutrients. And of course, here's a blueberry patch, courtesy of King Grove Organic Farm in Florida,
Yep.
and it's Real Organic Project certified.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And I think one important thing for consumers to realize that they sometimes don't is obviously there's a variety of, types of crops and varieties and growing methods. But in the end of the day, most of the flavor compounds that we really enjoy in plants come from stress. So when I used to grow tomatoes, if you had a stretch of especially hot weather or something like that, you'd get intense flavor in the tomatoes. So in a way, you can almost, when you've got these plants that are being grown in these absolutely perfect growing conditions where it's got this medium and it can't be affected by the weather, in a way it's been raised in an environment with no stressors, which is why I think people often find, the flavor is not as good in produce that's been produced hydroponically as soil grown produce.
Yeah, if you want real flavor, you have to make the plant think it's about to die. All right, and then it goes, okay, I think I'll tell you what, I'll give you some flavor. Maybe I'll give you some seeds. Would you like some seeds? I'll do that for you.
Why does that tomato sound like Jimmy Stewart?
Wait, just a minute here. I'll tell you what, I'll give you some flavor. Yeah. How would you like that? All right. So this is why and we could go on for a long time. Let's be clear. There's an argument out there right now, a huge argument about whether hydroponics does the same thing as growing in soil. And to just say blanketly, no, I'm not willing to say that. I do appreciate the stuff grown in the soil. I'm not defending hydroponics. I'm just saying that hydroponics is relatively new. And we need to have the science behind it fully examined. We do know that in the soil there are, there's all kinds of biology that we're just beginning to understand. And obviously, if you are manipulating water and adding nutrients, you don't get all the magic that's going on in soil. And some of it's a mystery to us. Isn't that right, Ariel?
Yeah, and I think one thing that's really important to point out as far as the work we do is we're not arguing that hydroponic shouldn't exist. This is not an argument around whether or not these growing methods should be used. It's an argument about whether or not they should be certified organic. And to our mind, hydroponic doesn't meet the basic definition of certified organic. And also for a lot of consumers, they have no way of knowing now what they bought. I think most consumers, if you talk to them, probably don't even know what hydroponic is, more or less that it could be certified organic. I think they made the base level assumption that the food they're buying has been grown using traditional methods in the soil. So, I always want to point out our vantage point has never been that like hydroponic is not a method people should use. It's just been that the USDA certified organic label is specifically there for farms that use specific growing methods and have certain kind of end goals here. And that's why we believe that, that label should be exclusively for crops that are grown in healthy living soil.
Okay. That takes us to the symposium that you're having all this month of January, and that's really why you're here. And your PR people will be very unhappy if I didn't get to this. So that's how we'll wrap up. You're doing a symposium every Sunday. You started last Sunday, the 3rd.
Correct.
It's going on this afternoon. So I'm telling you, folks, you could sign up now and be part of the symposium this afternoon.
And I believe they're talking soil this afternoon, aren't they?
We are, yes. Today's topic is soil health.
So you get to go on and listen and think, that idiot Nowak, he said that he wasn't sure how this all shakes down. I'm just saying there's a lot of science to be determined, and you get to hear the facts from one side of the story here, and it's a convincing argument, really. But the symposiums are every Sunday during the month of January from 2 to 4 p.m. Central, where we are, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern. You've got more than 60 prominent organic farmers and experts discussing, as we said, soil health, nutrition, climate change, and what can we do next. And the attendees can choose between live access interactive ticket or a pass to view recorded content. You want to tell us a little bit about that, Ariel?
Yeah, absolutely. So, obviously we have these, like you pointed out, these live sessions going on every week. If you can make the live sessions, we have what's called a Cultivate package. So if you were to buy a package today, you'll get to go to sessions 2 through 4 live, and you'll also have access to watch session 1 or any of the future sessions for 3 months in a pre-recorded format. If you don't have as much money or you don't have the same amount of time, we've got something called a Germinate Pass where for half the price, you'll have access to the recordings from all of the different 5 symposium sessions, and you can watch those anytime you like as well. I also want to point out we have scholarships, we have free options for people who are currently farmers and students. So we really want to make this a community event. We want to make sure people have the ability to show up. So if you're interested in attending, please don't let ability to pay kind of dissuade you. We've got a lot of different options on our website for how you can kind of make sure you get access to the materials regardless.
Yeah, the one last week was what is the Real Organic Project? So if you're in the catch-up mode, you could go to that and see that. Today, as Peggy mentioned, what is soil health? Next week is farming and climate, obviously very important. Session 4 on the 24th of January is health and nutrition. And then session 5, what can we do? So there's absolutely a lot going on. Are you speaking at this? Are you facilitating?
I was, it's so funny. I was going to be one of the speakers, and we just ran out of time, which is totally fine. We've got an amazing list. We've got Leah Coleman and Dan Barber and Leah Penniman and Jean-Martin Fortier and a whole list of just incredible.
Vandana Shiva, Alice Waters, Bill McKibben, Paul
Al
Hawken.
Gore.
Yeah, Al Gore. Yeah, I mean, we've really made an effort.
Bill Eichert.
Yeah, get the whole. Yeah, Bill Eichert is great. Yeah, we've got to really go across the whole landscape here. I think what's so interesting about organic and organic integrity is you have so many people from so many different parts of kind of the world that have a vested interest in this. Everything from consumers to scientists to farmers to activists, and we wanted to make sure we gave everybody a voice. So. We've got a really exciting list of people that are speaking to it. If you join the sessions live, got the ability to do breakout groups and networking with people across the country. So we're trying our best in COVID times to still build a little community and share the information best we can.
Well, in COVID times, it's been really fascinating to see how farmers and growers are doing, because some of them have actually done very, very well. It's a very interesting phenomenon. Given the way we started the pandemic and what everybody thought was going to happen, it hasn't really played out exactly the way people predicted. So again, you can, for the symposium, you can go to realorganicsymposium.org, but you can find that link on my website, MikeNowak.net. Go to the blog post for this week. It has all the other links. Once again, I apologize if you go there, you're going to see everything in the same color ink, the black, but just run your cursor over it and you'll see the links there, and it'll take you. As soon as I get off the air, I'm going to change them all to blue. So I don't know what happened. It just, I posted the
Gremlins.
thing. Yeah, exactly. Ariel Pressman, thank you so much. This has been, we're going to have you back and talk about, because I think the Real Organic Project is very important. I hope you get a lot more farmers involved. As you said, you're at 450 or thereabouts and going strong. And I imagine more and more. And we didn't even talk to you about, you bringing the hammer down because you're the certification guy. But we'll do that the next time you're here.
That sounds great. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I hope we get to see everybody at the symposium later today.
I hope so, too. Thanks so much. It's the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. We will be right back. Peggy and I have a few more things we want to discuss before we get to our gardening friends and what they did during the pandemic year. We hope you stick around.
You can help slow climate change in 2021 by composting, and you don't even need a backyard. By composting communally in multi-unit buildings across Chicagoland, Collective Resource Compost has diverted 7,000 tons of food scrap since 2010. CRC brings you a fresh 5-gallon bucket or a 32-gallon neighbor tote with each pickup. You fill it with organic matter, they swap it out, and get it to a commercial composting operation. Fight climate change. Go to collectiveresource.us.
Hello from Happy Leaf. This is BJ Miller, the horticulturist here on staff. The best way we can help you be successful with indoor gardening is to provide you with a really great grow light. There are a lot of choices on the market, and it can be extremely confusing to decide what you need. Our goal here at Happy Leaf is to provide you with a light that lasts a very long time and makes your plants really happy. We have several satisfied customers, including our friends Mike Nowak and Peggy because we have specifically designed a light that is versatile, it's very effective, and it is extremely simple to use. Our lights are perfect for seed starting, but you can do so much more, especially these months of the winter. You can supply yourself with your own leafy greens and herbs, grow lots of different types of vegetables, keep your small fruit trees thriving, and your houseplants will think you've sent them for a day at the spa.
At this time of year, we spend a lot of time indoors with our plants, so help them thrive. The plants you're viewing were treated with Leafzyme, a foliage spray designed to activate beneficial microbes already present on the leaves. A spritz every few weeks promotes growth-enhancing microorganisms that process dust and other particles into nutrition that indoor plants can absorb through their leaves for beautiful and vigorous growth. Go to blazing-star.com and check out their BioGarden line for home gardeners.
Collegiate, collegiate, yes we are collegiate, nothing intermediate. No ma'am, trousers baggy, all our clothes look raggy, but we're rough and ready, yay, raw, garters, all the things we never wear, and we don't have any use for red hot flannels, very, very seldom in a hurry, never ever worry, really sorry.
Yeah. And no particular reason I played that, except that, well, maybe, if we're talking about collegiate, we might be talking about McHenry County College and the new year and what they're doing up there, and they're doing some fabulous things. Speaking of organic farmers, there's a new chance to learn about growing your own food from McHenry County College's Center for Agrarian Learning. Atina Diffley, organic vegetable farmer and author of the award-winning memoir, Turn Her Sweet Corn, Organic Farming Works, is presenting 2 workshops of 2 sessions each. Both feature valuable skills for new and established farmers. The first is record keeping made easier. Record keeping made easier, strategies and systems. And then, by the way, that starts this Wednesday, January 13th, and then there will be a second session on the 20th. And speaking of records, I was talking to my friend Mac Austin, who has been on this program. She's a master naturalist and a friend, and we were ordering seeds. Kathleen and Mac and I were ordering seeds, and she said, "Oh, I'll go look at my journal to blah 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 blah." And my response was, "Journal? Boy, what a concept that is." Just as, I go out and I stand in the yard in the spring and I go, wait, I think I grew something there last year, and
that's where the phones come in real handy, though, too.
Didn't
you
I
can look
grow
back in the records.
You know what I did? You gave me the garlic because I am so darned lazy. What I did, you gave me the garlic, and each of the garlic, Peggy was nice enough to give me 3 different garlic types, and they were all identified by different colored ribbons. And I planted them, threw the ribbons on the ground on top of where I planted them, took a photo of it. And now I know which one is growing where. That's it. So that's
perfect. That's a good record.
Anyway, back to MCC. The second session for Atina Diffley is crop planning for market needs and profitability on January 27th and February 3rd. As part of your registration, you will receive either the Wholesale Success Manual or Direct Market Success Manual, an $80 value, published by Family Farm, which is supporting these workshops. As we've mentioned before, Atina Diffley has been a guest on our show. She's welcome back. We need to get her back. She knows her stuff, and you're going to be glad you signed up, especially when you realize that the workshops are available for only $5 each. Now, come on. You know, that's not a lot of money. Go to McHenry mchenry.edu/cal to find more information. That stands for Center for Agrarian Learning. mchenry.edu/cal. Welcome back to the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. And you were telling me the other day, Peggy, that I needed to bring back some of the stuff that we...
some of our drop-ins.
Some of our drop-ins that we, in all the technical madness, now that things are starting to slow down. And the only thing I need to fix now is why I have a little latency in this video stream, but we'll get to that. But I found this. Oh, wait, no, I turned that off. Let's do it this way.
Don't be a jerk.
We haven't played that in a long time, and it's so appropriate in this in the last few weeks in certain circles.
What a jerk move.
I mean, you know what I'm talking about? do you have any idea of why I might tell somebody?
Don't be a jerk.
Okay. And we have to say that's from Will County. Will County did the most magnificent series of videos in the past couple of years.
How not to use the forest preserve.
How not to use the forest preserves. And it shows all these people who are being jerks out there.
What a jerk move.
And with their dogs and with litter and
fishing and
just the ways
walking
that people can spoil your nice walk in a forest preserve or an open area just by being jerks. So their advice is
don't be a jerk.
Okay. And we want to let you know that. You and I have some stuff that we wanted to talk about, and I realize I don't have our chat function up here. I need to get to the chat function.
I don't have the chat function up either, so.
You don't either?
No.
So nobody's doing chat here today, this morning? Oh dear. Well, let us know what.
Well, okay. You mean Restream?
Yeah.
Yes. We've got Jessica watching from New Jersey this morning. Susan watching from Elmhurst. Amos says good morning.
Hey, Amos.
Nancy Bender is watching. I need some water. You take it over.
Hello. Okay. And I'm not seeing any messages in there. I don't know why I'm not.
Oh, probably because if you just opened it, it doesn't show the past messages.
Oh, really? Okay.
Okay. So, Skeet just posted. Hey, Skeet.
And Skeet's there as well. Yeah, if you're there, let us know you're out there right now. Type in a message. The way we've got it set up, if you type into Facebook, if you type into Twitter, if you type into YouTube, Periscope or YouTube.
Mm-hmm. Snappy J Dog says hi.
Periscope is Twitter.
But if you're on Twitter, it doesn't post. You have to be using the Periscope app.
Yeah, you got to be on Periscope. Yeah, but if you're on, yeah, that's true. Some people will watch us and listen on Facebook and then tweet, and they're going to show up. So Matt Kelleher, who are the guests today? Well, we just had a guest, Ariel. In the second hour, we have a woman named Alex Zuck and Meggie Carides. And Meggie is a communications professional in the Chicago area. Peggy and I work with her all the time. And Alex is a healthcare professional on the southeast side. And they both sort of got into gardening because of the pandemic this year, and they have great stories. And I've got some photos from their yards as well. So, more
people pouring in.
Look at
Allison, good morning from Grays Lake. Sarah Botka, present. Jamie, hello from LaGrange Park. Jamie. And Dan Costa is listening as always.
Dan is very, you know what? Since Dan popped up here, one of the things that we didn't do, and I wanted to make clear because he sent me an email. Let me find it here. All right.
Keep posting while you're looking.
Yeah, just keep, all of you who are out there, just post and let us know where you are. We want to say hi. And we did a show, the last show, I believe, of 2020. And we were talking about Christmas cactus. And and we inadvertently spread some inaccurate information. And I want to correct that because Dan Costa wrote to me, and we said something about the effect that Christmas cactus are basically the same. It's just when you get them to bloom. And Dan wrote, not so much. He says he says that Thanksgiving, Christmas, and Easter cactus are not the same. And the three different, and I guess they are genera, or species. I don't know what it is, Dan. You let me know. Zygocactus, Schlumbergera, and Ripsalidopsis.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, really. Wait.
Wow.
Wait.
Don't be a jerk.
Okay. And he says that Thanksgiving cacti are quicker to bloom and come in many colors. The segments have horns, which the other do not. And that's interesting because Nancy Bender, who's watching us today, recently presented me with a gift. I remember, and on that very show, I said, boy, I haven't had a Christmas cactus in a long time. And she said, I got one. And we arranged a pickup, and I have brought the cactus home, and now I have to figure out which one it is. You talk about horns. This thing seems to have horns. I'm wondering if it has...
Can you hold it up? Dan's watching.
I would have to go all the way over to the other room and get... Okay. Well, if you're willing to tap dance, I would do it. Wait a second. Okay, you do that. Talk amongst yourselves. You're Peggy, you're on. I'll be right back.
I'm on. Okay, I don't know.
Here.
We'll talk about something here. I'll get... Actually, Dan says those are the genera on the different cactus. So who else has joined? We've got Linda from Harvard. We've got Zan from Evanston. David from Berwyn. Okay, who else is out there? Well, Mike is running to get his cactus. So Dan, get ready to do an ID. I can see Mike headed back this way right now. Here he is. Drum roll.
Hope I didn't interrupt anything.
Oh, no. No. We were kind of just waiting for you to come back.
Okay, here's the cactus. It's really, look at this. It's really quite, and there's a butterfly little thing in the middle of it. All right, so I guess I have to put this up here so we can see.
Yeah, it looks like it's got the horns on it.
Yeah, so Dan, if you're watching, is that, can you ID it from, let's bring it in even a little closer. It's got to stop moving around. So there we go.
Not to put you on the spot or anything, Dan.
No, but I want an answer in 10 seconds. Let's see if I can put this down without garroting myself.
Careful!
Okay. Kathleen, you're
right.
too late.
Okay, well, while we're waiting on that, so which of these?
But I wanted to say, he says the segments have horns, which the others do not. That's the Thanksgiving cacti. True Christmas cactus are only in pink and hard to find for sale. Interesting. So if you've got, it's like...
Dan says it's a Thanksgiving cactus.
So there we go. I've got a Thanksgiving cactus. Which one? Is that the zygocactus, the Schlumbergera, or the Ripsalidopsis? Salidopsis. So he says a true Christmas cactus are only pink, hard to find. Easter cactus flowers look daisy-like, and there are several colors. So there you go. So we learned something about Christmas cactus.
He says zygocactus.
So
thank you, Dan.
So I've got the zygocactus. So good. See? And then so for care and feeding, that's important to know what kind of plant you have. But it does. Speaking of cacti, it takes me to the article that you sent about plants, and I've got to go there. I don't know if you have that up already about the favorite.
Oh, today is Houseplant Appreciation Day.
Yeah, and and who decides that it's Houseplant Appreciation Day?
Well, perhaps this group, but whether you're green fingered or not, it seems their obsession is even more transparent on social media, with more than 4 million posts for hashtag houseplants on Instagram.
Wow.
So, homeowners around the world can't get enough of houseplants with more than 4 million posts on Instagram, like I said. The most Instagrammable houseplant is cactus with more than 23 million posts, followed by Hoya. The least tagged houseplant is the corn plant, but that's got over 40,000 tag posts.
I'm
The most
trying to find that because I was.
Instagrammable.
Why? First of all, I want to know why cactus are the most photographed. I don't get that. I don't even own a
Well,
cactus.
succulents have gotten very popular. Succulents and cacti have
But
become
I
very
feel
popular
sorry
right
for
now.
the corn plant, the Dracaena.
Uh-huh.
It's like everybody has one, and
Wah,
nobody
wah.
nobody takes a picture of it.
I
Come
guess
on.
not. But the most Instagrammable air purifying plants, according to homehow.co.uk, the most Instagrammable air purifying plants are the snake plant and the Chinese evergreen, with 300,605 tags for the snake plant and 242,599 for the Chinese evergreen. So there you go.
It's just kind of nuts. It's it's
So if you want to celebrate Houseplant Appreciation Day, go and post on Instagram and hashtag houseplants.
and
There you
and
go.
the thing is they're basing their oh, and I'm trying to find the link. I was looking at it last night. I saw it on my phone, and I was able to find it on my phone easy. And now I'm looking at the article. Yeah, where's the link in there?
Well, it's homehow.co.uk.
Right, I went there, but where do you go once you get there?
I don't know, it's buried. It's
Well,
not a
see,
direct link, unfortunately.
well, it was on the phone. It's just weird. Okay.
Oh, maybe they moved it. Um,
But the but the point is they're basing this all on Instagram. It's like
yeah,
if you don't do Instagram, I mean this is the Instagrammable plants, which is kind of
yeah.
a weird odd thing anyway. So those are there are 4 million posts, more than 4 million posts of plants on Instagram, which is just crazy. And again,
Just with that with that hashtag houseplants. There could be any, this is just that tag.
yeah. Okay. One of the things we wanted to bring up also is something that you got, Peggy, from Go Green Highland Park,
Yeah.
and it's kind of cool. They did this newsletter where they gave folks 10-year New Year's resolutions you can make to help the planet.
hmm
And since we're just early into the new year, um, they create this list that you might want to pay attention to. For the number one, and I agree wholeheartedly with it, is inform yourself.
hmm
Learn about Illinois' proposed legislation, the Clean Energy Jobs Act. We had Lisa Albrecht talking about that on the show at the end of last year. Read books such as The Uninhabitable Earth. Peggy and I have a stack of books that we're trying to get to for this year and getting folks on the show, and there will be some more book reports going on very soon.
Definitely. Definitely. Number two, write or call your legislators to tell them that addressing climate change or clean water, clean air, overuse of plastics, forest preservation, conservation, whatever you care about is important to you, and you'd be willing to vote for it. So contact your legislators for the issues that you care about.
Yep, absolutely.
Number three, use less plastic.
Here,
Buy
here.
produce without plastic. Pantry foods that are packaged in metal, glass, or paper you can reuse. Bring your own bags if you can. Um, Stop using plastic utensils. Don't get them if you're getting takeout food.
I have a place I go to in the neighborhood where I have trained the guy. I go to a Thai place in Logan Square, and my buddy Chong, who is there, I'll call, and he'll say, "Would you like to place an order?" I go, "Yeah, it's Mr. Mike." And he goes, "Oh, Mr. Mike," and then I'll place my order, and I show up, and there are no plastic There's no plastic silverware in there at all. And when I leave, I do not let him give me a plastic bag. They have a paper bag, which they then put into a plastic bag, and I say, nope, no plastic bag, and he knows that. So it's always set up for me, especially if it's me. He knows not to put that stuff in. So you can train people. You just have to be aware of it yourself. It took me a long time because I couldn't remember. I would forget, and I finally did train myself to do that. So less, and especially, they talk about urge your favorite retailers to take plastic problems seriously. You can find metal drinking straws, bamboo toothbrushes. We have bamboo toothbrushes here. Reusable silicone and beeswax wraps and containers. We reuse wraps like crazy in this household. There's
rewash the plastic bags, rewash the foil.
It's a pain in the butt, but we do. We wash, and then at a certain point, the foil gives up, and then you recycle it. Let's see here. Bamboo utensils. Bar shampoo.
I was gonna.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No.
I was just running on to a couple of the other ones. Well, you were still on that one though, so sorry.
Well, anyway, the plastic is so ubiquitous and such a huge problem. And there's so many ways you can cut back on it. And if the consumers don't do it, it was as like Ariel was saying, if you buy the stuff, the people in the stores know you're buying it. If you don't buy they're watching. They know you're not buying it. Really?
Yeah.
And you think I can't do anything as a single consumer? No, but if everybody does it, it makes a difference. All right. Yeah. Go ahead. Move on to the other.
I was running through a couple of these quickly. Use solar energy, community solar programs, reduce meat consumption, donate to one of the many nonprofits who are creating solutions, donate to one of the groups that is actively working right now on things, volunteer, be it locally, be it nationally, be it in your region, get free training courses, donate some of your time, start a compost pile. We talk about that a lot.
You're here.
And here's
I have, by the way, speaking of compost piles, what happens in my house, of course, is I put compost from the kitchen in big containers, and then they sit out on the porch until I get a chance to throw them into the compost pile. I got like half a dozen of those ready to go into the compost pile right now. I mean, it doesn't make any difference. It's going to sit there anyway and not decompose very much over the winter, but then spring comes and it all heats up.
One thing because this is up in Lake County, if you get Lakeshore Recycling as your waste hauler, we've had the option for a while to have curbside organic pickup. And I think I sent you something a couple of weeks ago that Swalco, Solid Waste of Lake County, is also starting a pilot program on composting.
Okay.
So it'll be interesting to see how many more communities start that this year.
All right. And anyway, use solar energy if you can, reduce meat consumption, donate to one of the many nonprofits who are creating solutions, volunteer, avoid using pesticides and weed killers. Please stop doing that. That's just nonsense. You don't need them. And give away rather than throw away. You can arrange for charity donation in a lot of places. There's just so many different things you can do to get rid of your junk, and it doesn't mean throwing it into the garbage. Okay, we're out of time.
And as they say at the end here, let's do this thing, not just because it's hard, but because we have no other choice.
Exactly. A good way to start 2021. It's the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. When we come back, we're talking to gardeners and how they coped with a pandemic year. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Vic Nakashima with Bartlett Tree Experts. When a tree grows in its ideal form, it's amazing how it's naturally engineered to withstand the challenges of weather and time. But defects in trees are common and make it more likely that a tree or branch will fall over the course of time or in severe weather. Some of these defects can be addressed by the addition of support systems. These systems should be installed by an arborist, one who has specific expertise in following established industry standards to help ensure safety and effectiveness, and that the correct tools and equipment are used. A weak branch union, or V-crotch, is one common defect. It may be found close to the ground or higher up in the tree's canopy. Either way, it puts the tree at a serious disadvantage. Excessive movement of these two stems can push the strength of this union past its capacity and cause it to break. So it could use some additional support, an advantage if you will. We can help limit the movement of these two stems by cabling them together higher up in the canopy of the tree. Some trees may also benefit from a bracing rod, which is a threaded rod installed directly through the branch unit. These add strength to the defective area when it experiences excessive force, often caused by these stems twisting in the wind. For over a century, Bartlett Tree Experts has been developing cabling and bracing systems that have become the industry's standard. We can design and install a support system that can help minimize the impact a defect has on your tree and help it to weather the storm.
Welcome to the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. Green, gardening, and environment radio with just a soupçon of humor. Or is that a dash? Brought to you by Bartlett Tree Experts. Every tree needs a champion. Go to bartlett.com. Here they are again, Peggy Malecki and Mike Nowak.
All I need is good food to eat and make me healthy, wealthy, wide awake. Lettuce, tomatoes, rooted bacon. What about those sweet potatoes? All I need is good food to eat. All I need is good food to eat. All I need is good tools to make me music, porches,
and welcome back
Give me all that I can take
to the show.
stuff that I can bring.
It's great to have you here on a Sunday morning, and for all of you folks skipping church, I really, really, really appreciate it. And so, what I like to tell people is that this is a kind of church here, and I want to play one more thing, Peggy, in honor of you, because you said we needed to play this.
Alan!
All right, Maggie, you're laughing. Do you know what that is?
Yes, it sounds like my kids.
Oh.
Mom!
Mommy.
No, it's okay. It's an animal thing that I think the BBC did, or
The
somebody.
BBC.
Yeah.
And I believe that is a prairie dog.
It might very well be. Yeah. And so and by the way, that when I said Meggie there, I saw her laughing. That's Meggie. How do you pronounce your last name?
It's Caritas.
Caritas. All right. Make sure, because I never get it right.
I know. Nobody does.
Peggy does. Peggy's known you long enough to do that.
Yeah.
Meggie Caritas and Meggie, we've known for a while. She's worked with us on many things. She is a Chicago-based communications consultant, writer, and we just found out master gardener in training. How's that going?
I got a 96 on my final exam in December. So now, yes.
Woohoo!
I'm excited. Thank you.
Yeah, you need to now go out and do your volunteer work, right?
Yep.
All right. On her left, as you're watching on the screen, is Alexandria Zuck, sometimes known as Alex. We'll call you Alex. And you're the person who made this happen, Alex, because I received an email from you. Oh, and by the way, I should say that Alex is an acute care physical therapist working at a large trauma center on the south side of Chicago. Actually, I wouldn't consider that south side. It's in Aurora, right?
Oaklawn.
Oaklawn. Oh, where did I see Aurora? I saw Aurora in something you sent me. Okay, so it is the south side of Chicago. Okay. And you wrote to me a couple of months ago, actually, about what was going on in your life, and for one thing, that I have to thank you, because you said, well, let me just read what you sent us. You sent us an email that said, "I am a very, very new, very green gardener, making plenty of rookie mistakes, but I have been incredibly lucky to have come across your podcast. You have encouraged me to step out of my comfort zone when it comes to my home garden and inspired me to take the knowledge I have learned from your broadcasts and share them with my community. Well, first of all, I'm flattered. Thank you so much. How did you happen to stumble across our podcast?
Well, being a new gardener, I didn't know where to start, so I just started looking up gardening podcasts. And then I ran into a lot that just didn't pertain to living in the Chicago area. So I narrowed the search, looked up Chicago gardening podcasts, and you guys have had you pretty much in my ear anytime I'm out when I have a moment to be out in the garden.
Wow. Okay.
Thank you.
Can we send her a prize? We got to send her something. So you but the other part of this story is something we mentioned earlier, which is that when the pandemic hit, you, of course, were working in a healthcare facility. Tell me what went down when COVID-19 came to town.
Well, it was pretty scary at first. We didn't really know much about what was going on. All we saw was what they were saying on the news, and then slowly the atmosphere inside the hospitals began to change as well. Fewer visitors, more restrictions, obviously more PPE. That's protective equipment that we were all wearing pretty much the whole day. And then, as I said to you in a previous email, things got pretty quiet for me. They started shutting down our elective procedures. Even people that probably should have been going to the hospital weren't anymore. So they started to cut hours for the therapy department because there really wasn't anyone to treat. And I'm a very active, need something to do, need to help grow things and move them along kind of person. And so I decided to start a garden, and I had no idea what to do. So I started researching and reading and pretty much like scoured the shelves and grabbed as many seeds as I could during that initial like COVID panic, and just threw it in the ground and hoped for the best.
Well, I hope you got some good advice from us once or twice on the show. But the thing that we do, I hope, is turned you to the right kinds of books to look for and resources where you could put a garden together. You sent me some photos, and I'll get to them in a little bit. But you seem to know what you're doing there. Tell me just a little bit. You mentioned the other day, getting back to the pandemic, you mentioned that you've actually received the first dose of the vaccine. You're the only person I know who has received a dose of the vaccine.
So I actually got my second dose on Friday.
Oh, wow.
So I'm currently completely vaccinated. Get out and do it when you get the opportunity. It's going to help a lot of people. It's going to help a lot of healthcare workers ease the burden that they're under. I will say that to anticipate the second dose, you might not feel so great afterwards, but that's expected. It just means that your body is doing what it's supposed to be doing because you develop proper antibodies from the first dose. And so if you don't feel so great, it's normal. It's what we want. It means your body's reacting properly.
Does this mean that as the pandemic went along, you said, you got shunted home, they said, get out of here, and there wasn't a lot of physical therapy because of the pandemic. But I would imagine as things changed that you started seeing patients again. Is that the case?
Oh, yeah. So they opened up the elective procedures again. I've never worked on the COVID unit, but I have coworkers that from the beginning have pretty much been in working with the COVID patients as well, helping them to get up and get moving again. So it's not that therapy is not happening. It's just we had to kind of adapt and adjust how we did it.
And the point I was going to make, though, is that if you're seeing patients again, you need to be protected.
Yes.
So if you're actually doing physical therapy, you need a vaccine. And I'll bet that has given you some peace of mind.
Definitely, especially with coming home every day. My routine from the beginning has pretty much been I have a detached garage, but I come into the garage, I change into a robe, I go immediately to the shower. I don't talk to anyone. I can't even hug my kid when I first get home. So now that I have the vaccine, I'm a little less concerned about bringing it into my home. So it's been it's a blessing.
Wow. Wow. I'm sorry. I'm just, I know you're not in the COVID ward, but even so, being as close as you are to patients is, it just kind of blows me away. So thank you for your work. And let's go to Meggie here. And then I'm going to get pictures of each of your gardens because you guys sent me some stuff and we can talk about what you did.
Yeah.
What about your story, Meggie, during the pandemic? How did you get inspired?
Yeah, so we've had this house for it'll be 19 years in March. And for all those years, we've never really done a ton of gardening. We've done a couple of tomatoes, a couple of peppers. We just never really had the time, honestly. We now have now they're teenagers, but we just didn't put a lot of time and investment in it. And once the pandemic hit and we were all stuck at home, but the other thing, you're not just stuck at home, we weren't running around. So my kids have after school activities. On weekends, we were always doing something. We never really had enough time to invest in our garden. So because we finally had the time and we had cabin fever already, we just started doing more work outside. And thankfully, my mom, who's part of our pod, has a lot of experience. So she came and helped me understand the importance of proper soil and where things should go based on sunlight and soil. So all of that kind of helped me develop a garden that I never knew was possible. The other thing is because our sheltering in place began in mid-March, I started seeds inside because there was nothing else to do. And it went crazy. I mean, every single ledge had red silo cups with seeds. I mean, Peggy knows because she's probably seen the photos. I mean, the first time I literally saw a seed, the first time I saw the plant coming up, I was in tears. I was so excited. I'm like, I grew that. It was so fun. So I think based on that, and kind of like Alex, I had no idea. So, we didn't order seeds in advance, how many other thousands of people in the country. So I relied on, I live in Old Irving Park, and there's a neighboring gardening group called the Avondale Gardening Association. And somehow I stumbled upon them. I have no idea how. And one of the women who was in charge of it had seeds. And she was like, "Do you want some seeds?" I'm like, "Yes, I would love some seeds." So one, frigid March, I walked over to her home. She gave me, I don't know, half a dozen type of seeds, and I grew all of them. So it was through the generosity. It was through the generosity of someone else who had seeds already available. So it was a low risk for me, right? I'm like, what do I have to lose, right? And they grew. Oh, but talk about experimentation, like Alex, we just didn't know. So I had no idea. So I just took my silo cups outside, grabbed some soil from my garden, brought them back in, put the seeds in there. And one day I remember we were having a Zoom session with the Avondale Gardening Association. And I'm like, my tomato seeds are just not coming up. And one of the women was asked, "Well, what kind of soil did you use?" I'm like, "I just went to my backyard." She's like, "Oh, well, maybe they were." She was being so kind because she didn't want to crush my soul. And she's like, "Well, maybe they might grow." But she knew. She's like, "That's not the kind of soil you want inside, right?" But you learn. That's how we learn.
Oh, that's fantastic. Did you grow anything from seed?
In the community.
Yeah, you get exactly the gardening community. And Alex, did you grow things from seed as well?
Oh, everything. And speaking of help of neighbors, and the soil, I we obviously didn't get this going until March when everyone was sent home, and there was no soil to be found anywhere unless you were to buy.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh.
3 yards of soil, I think, and I couldn't even find that. And my neighbor next door was nice enough to say that her husband had unfortunately passed and she no longer needed the bed, and he had been cultivating his garden since they've lived here, like decades. So I spent the first 3 weeks with my kid's wagon and like a big bin, shoveling it and moving it around the fence line, dumping it in the garden. Everything was from seed, and I almost gave up on it until my husband on Mother's Day said, I know that you're freaking out. I know nothing's coming up, but have you been out there and looked? And I went, and that's when I saw the first like rows popping up. It was amazing.
Yeah. Sometimes they don't come up. I've had that issue too, and I don't blame myself. I blame the seeds usually when that happens. But
or the weather if it's particularly cool.
Exactly. Well, let's since you're talking about that, let's go here and take a look. Whoops, that shouldn't have happened. It should have gone like this. Okay, there we go. There's your yard, and tell me about, you obviously did some things right because you've got raised beds there. So how did you get the raised beds?
Well, that was the first thing I did when I went to the local Home Depot. I got all the wood and set it up. My husband helped me build them.
So you didn't even get a kit. You just went and got the wood, and you must have read about how to put a raised bed together.
No. I mean, I watched one YouTube video, so the measurements, you can't see it, but in that middle row between them, they're a little bit long, but I used it to my advantage. I just took a couple extra 2x4s and made like benches to put containers on. So I made a mistake, but I adapted to it.
Well, that's great. And I'm looking at the sod on the right side there. Did you dig up sod and then turn it over and use it as soil?
So I should have dug the sod up before I put the beds in the ground. Didn't end up doing that. So we ended up taking the sod from those 3 beds and putting it in that first one. We covered it with a tarp all summer. So it's been getting broken down. And then this spring, or maybe next year, we'll see what it looks like. I plan on untarping it and then having a 4th bed.
Yeah.
See, these are things
nice
that
soil.
people need to know, is that everybody makes mistakes, and everybody figures things out as they go along. Let's take a look at another. Here's I assume that's your husband and your little one.
Yeah, and my son David,
and the supervisor out there in the yard, the dog.
Oh yeah. So yeah, this is where we started. I got the fencing even from the neighbor next door. You can see their house in the corner there. There's the tarp bed that we were able to work with. That tarp has completely degraded, and I learned that tip from your guys' show. So thank you for that.
For the tarp, for having the killing the grass and that sort of thing by putting a tarp over it. Is that what you're talking about?
For the extra.
Well, cool. I'm wait a second. I'm giving myself a ding here because somebody learned something from the show. All right, and now let's fast forward to this and look at that.
Wow,
the jungle.
Nice.
The jungle.
Wow.
This was later in the
lettuce.
Well, the sun was pretty rough on it, but the tomatoes are in that far left bed. Those I grew from plants that I had miraculously found at like a little pop-up nursery, because otherwise you couldn't find them anywhere this year. We also I had harvested our beets down in the corner, some carrots. I tried potatoes. That was a fail. And then that really crazy tall plant in the back right corner is the broccoli. So we had a lot of really good broccoli flower salads. I would say we never really got to have broccoli. But the flowers are edible too, so we just
Well,
used what we had.
And quite nutritious.
The flowers are wonderful. That's how you teach kids to eat broccoli, because you get broccoli to bloom into the flower, and then you say, hey, you want to eat a flower? You don't tell them it's broccoli. And you just say, want to eat a flower? And they go, yeah. And so they eat the flower, and then you say, you just ate broccoli. And it tastes pretty good. Now, the thing is, you realize that to get broccoli, you needed to harvest it before it became a flower.
Yeah. Things were crazy. I read all about how to cut it back, and I mean, between trying to manage, I think I might have bit off a little more than I could chew. You can see the size of the garden.
Oh my goodness, yes. People tell you, if in a normal situation, I would tell somebody to take one of those 4x8 beds and start with that. But you went whole hog. You had like 4 of them there. So
and some containers.
And containers, which takes us to the next photo with the biggest, fattest caterpillar I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, that was our buddy. I was hoping that he'd make it so that we could have some
your swallowtail
next year. Yeah, so we'll see. The next plan is to put some perennials in that'll attract more of them as well. So
it looks like you had dill. Looks like a pepper is in one of those.
Yep. So pepper is now behind me. Yeah, we have dill, we have thyme, oregano, cilantro, rosemary, and some sage. The sage did really well.
And were these in these containers on that little bench you created on the side of the planter?
Yeah, a lot of them are going to have to get moved this year because the sun, it's full sun in that area. So I'm going to have to rethink some of where things are going.
All right, let's take a look at one more here. And what have we got?
So over to the left was what was supposed to be cauliflower. It never, the heads never came. So the middle were a bunch of bunching onions. To the right was cabbage, and those did really well, except we had some aphids. So I got some like other bugs to try and prevent that next year. And then in the back, we had what was supposed to be Brussels sprouts. That didn't happen either. And then the broccoli and some celery.
You were really, really, really ambitious there. It's pretty amazing stuff. So congratulations on what you did there and what you were able to accomplish. Looks like you grew a lot and were able to feed yourself quite a bit.
Oh yeah, we didn't have to buy any vegetables this year.
Nice.
So that was awesome.
And as you said, though, it was hard getting seed early on, wasn't it?
Well, yeah, and I didn't know what would grow and how and where, so I thought that this would kind of be a trial to hopefully do better this year.
All right, let's go to...
in many cases, I was going to say real quick, it's also an experiment of, even if you didn't get the heads of broccoli or the Brussels sprouts to form, the leaves are totally edible. So you still have, it's just different from what you were expecting.
We made a bunch of smoothies. I blended it all up.
Nice.
All right, let's look at Maggie's garden here. And what are we seeing, Maggie?
So for the on the right side, you can see there's a new fence, and part of that actually, if many people remember, in I think it was like middle of March or early April, we ended up with a really bad wind. So the fence, which is part of our neighbor's fence, fell. And so we replaced that whole fence, and that kind of helped us have a clean slate. So you could see here our first bed, which is long, and I think it's like maybe 3 feet wide. It's 12 feet long. So that's how we started. And we put some perennials in the front, which is on the left side.
Well, let's go to this and what are we seeing here?
So here, my picture's a little pixelated on my screen, but you could see it's all full of plants. And the reason the path is kind of crappy looking right now is because we ended up putting a paver path from the back deck to our garage. So it looks kind of nasty there. But you can see on the left side along the fence, if you remember, that was all completely nothing. And that's all, there's tomatoes in there, there's cucumbers, there's lettuce. There's a lot of tomatoes. There's onions, there are eggplants, cauliflowers, basil. I mean, there's just so, and and all the way towards the back, which is where the garage is. You can't really see it now because we took them out by the time we took this photo. We had about 15 plants in the back by where the garbage looks, of okra. We were really successful with okra this year. And then along the garage, which again was a mistake because we put it too close to the garage wall, we have beans and potatoes, tomatoes, and some cucumbers. And then by the arbor, which we put in there, are all perennials. So we actually took out the grass so we could start putting more perennials and native pollinators.
And you can see some
and
of the
this
harvest.
Is just some of our bounty.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing when you look at that, how much you were able to produce. I want to show you what really impresses me. And Alex, you're going to be jealous. They were able to grow potatoes. I think potatoes are the most fun of anything, especially not just for kids. For me, it's a treasure hunt. It's a treasure hunt when you go in there and you start digging and you see what you can find.
Yeah, I've had good luck using the cloth sacks, which also makes it easier to harvest them, and then you can move them around. I'm sorry?
I picked some of those up this year.
Oh, good.
Yeah,
So
I've found those work well for potatoes.
And you mentioned the okra, and this is kind of out of sequence here, but this is your okra bed, right?
Yes. Yeah, that was maybe a few weeks into it that you can start seeing them grow. And I didn't know with this, but and I think I mentioned this on one of my Facebook pages, so I think Peggy, you might know. I didn't realize that the okra is part of the hibiscus family. So you see these beautiful yellow hibiscus-looking flowers as they're growing. So it's pretty because they're not only pretty plants, but they also produce okra, which I love okra.
So we only have a couple of minutes here. What are the lessons you've learned? Obviously, and what I'm hoping that folks watching this are getting is you guys did a lot of trial and error, and you're very honest about, oh yeah, we put that there, that didn't work, and we tried this and that didn't work. That's gardening. That's how gardening works. I mean, you can read every book in the world and still not get it right. But I think the best thing to do is what you guys did, is just dig in, start going. So, Meggie, what do you think you learned this past year?
One of the things, and this is a little bit of a financial term, but I would diversify my portfolio. So my potatoes, even though I had really good success with one planter, another part ended up getting, there was some sort of infestation of something. So I lost all those potatoes over there. So by setting them aside from each other, I didn't lose all of my potatoes. So I'm just going to try to start putting things in different places. So if I do end up with a bug of some sort that I cannot figure out, then, so that's my biggest tip. It's just, yeah. So I wouldn't give up, Alex, on the potatoes. They were so much fun.
No.
So much fun to harvest.
Alex, yeah, you gotta go back to potatoes, and I think Alex will. I think she's going to try that. So what did you learn this year, Alex?
I think above all else, I learned that we can adapt to anything in healthcare, in the garden, in our homes. If you run into an obstacle, it's just that. It's not an end. And in the garden, it just taught me that if I'm patient and I take a step back, that, it's not a loss. It's just a lesson, if anything.
Exactly. If you plant enough stuff, some of it's going to fail and some of it's going to be. I had some terrible failures this year, and I'm still scratching my head. Can't figure out why, but I had some amazing successes. Peggy, you do the same thing, right?
Yeah, wasn't a good year for eggplant, that's for sure. I had flowers and nary an eggplant, but wow, was it a great year for squash.
Well, and I will tell you that there are people out there who don't know what to do with their zucchini because they grow so much of it. We had like 6, and I scratch my head. I've never been able to grow zucchini prolifically, and I don't know why. But I usually get enough to be satisfied, but it's not those people with wheelbarrows full and they're schlepping it over to their neighbors because they don't know what to do with it. So everybody has their strengths and weaknesses. Alex Zuck and Peggy Carides, thank you so much. It has been just, I'm so glad we could have this conversation because I just wanted to talk to gardeners who are out there trying to get it done. And I hope this has been an inspiration to a few people watching this. I think that this year, as Peggy said earlier in the show, 50% more gardeners from last year, and we had somewhere between 16 and 21 million new gardeners already in the country. So
get out to your independent garden center, your independent seed supplier, and get ordering.
And a word to the wise, because we started ordering seeds the other day. They are going fast. So get your seed orders in right now. Exactly, Alex. I'm telling you, do it right this second. When you get off the phone here, go do it.
Alex, go order Heracles tomatoes and
exactly. Thank you both. I tell you what we may have to we may have to have you back later in the year to see how year number 2 goes.
All right.
It'll be a pleasure.
All right.
Thank you.
You guys take care, and thank you so much for being part of the show.
Thank you.
It's the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. Guess who's coming up next? Rick DiMaio with our weather and climate.
Hello from Happy Leaf. This is BJ Miller, the horticulturist here on staff. The best way we can help you be successful with indoor gardening is to provide you with a really great grow light. There are a lot of choices on the market, and it can be extremely confusing to decide what you need. Our goal here at Happy Leaf is to provide you with a light that lasts a very long time and makes your plants really happy. We have several satisfied customers, including our friends Mike Nowak and Peggy Malecki, because we have specifically designed a light that is versatile, it's very effective, and it is extremely simple to use. Our lights are perfect for seed starting, but you can do so much more, especially these months of the winter. You can supply yourself with your own leafy greens and herbs, grow lots of different types of vegetables, keep your small fruit trees thriving, and your houseplants will think you've sent them for a day at the spa.
At this time of year, we spend a lot of time indoors with our plants, so help them thrive. The plants you're viewing were treated with LeafZyme, a foliage spray designed to activate beneficial microbes already present on the leaves. A spritz every few weeks promotes growth-enhancing microorganisms that process dust and other particles into nutrition that indoor plants can absorb through their leaves for beautiful and vigorous growth. Go to blazing-star.com and check out their BioGarden line for home gardeners.
You have the ability to give your soil a superpower. It's called composting. If you don't have a backyard, you need to contact Collective Resource Compost. CRC has diverted 7,000 tons of food scraps since 2010. They bring you a fresh 5-gallon bucket or a 32-gallon neighbor tote with each pickup. You fill it with organic matter from your kitchen, they swap it out and get it to a commercial composting operation. Fight climate change. Go to collectiveresource.us.
It's hot in December, cold in July. When it rains, it pours out of a poisonous sky. In California, the body counts keep getting higher. It's evil out there, man, that state is always on fire. It's been a hard day on the planet. How much is it all worth? It's getting harder to understand it. Things are tough all over on Earth.
Welcome back to the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. I see Rick DiMaio has just signed in, but we've got. You don't need to wave that. I'm on top of it. Let's talk about that.
Sure. As perfect timing again, as we're talking about gardening and growing for this year. It's got a new chance to learn new things about growing your own food from McHenry County College's Center for Agrarian Learning. Atina Diffley, who's an organic vegetable farmer and author of the award-winning memoir, Turn Here Sweet Corn, Organic Farming Works, is presenting 2 workshops of 2 sessions each.
Both feature valuable skills for new and established farmers. The first is coming up starting January 13th. That's this Wednesday. It's called Record Keeping Made Easier, Strategies and Systems. And it's January 13th and 20th. The second is Crop Planning for Market Needs and Profitability, which is January 27th and February 3rd. Now, as part of your registration, you'll receive either the Wholesale Success Manual or the Direct Market Success Manual, both an $80 value, that are published by Family Farmed, which is supporting these workshops. Now, as we've mentioned before, and as you talked about earlier, Tina Diffley has been a guest on our show. She knows her stuff, and you're really going to be glad you sign up, especially when you realize the workshops are only $5 each. So go to mchenry.edu/cal to find out more. That's mchenry.edu/cal.
This is the Mike Nowak Show with Peggy Malecki. Let's go to the audio line and see if Rick DiMaio is there. Rick, are you with us?
Yep, I'm here, Mike and Peg. Good morning on the morning and day after. Morning, Peg.
And one of the things we found out this week is that we're tying a record this year with as the hottest year ever. That's pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, we'll call it the warmest year since records have been kept. If we say ever, then you'll have people on the other side go since 1.5 billion years ago. So when we say ever, we really mean 1880. But I know that you already know that, and Mike, your listeners know that as well. But right now that's preliminary data. That's from some of the European offices. But I would not be surprised if we don't come in tied with 2016. We'll be pretty much close to that. And again, this all comes during a time of the year where we're actually under a La Nina. So a La Nina, if we remind the listeners, is a cooling of the waters in the Pacific Ocean from about the date line just off the coast of South America. And the fact that that part of the ocean is cool, still getting temperature departures of about 1.75 degrees Fahrenheit above normal is somewhat alarming.
Yeah, because if this were a El Nino year, it might be much above that, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's a good point. We'd probably be anywhere between 2 and 2.25. And there's been a lot of chatter about the stratospheric polar vortex splitting. And when that happens, you tend to get the polar vortex dislodged and pushed south. This has been something that some of the long-range numerical models have been hinting at now for about a week and a half to 2 weeks. But what's interesting is every time they seem to move towards that direction, we continue with a very, very warm flow of air off the northern Pacific, which kind of moderates the Arctic air. For instance, 2 weeks ago, it looked like by the time we would get to this Wednesday and Thursday, we would have temperatures in the teens. And now it looks like the Arctic air is going to stay north of us, and it looks like more of a polar intrusion. So as much as meteorologists want to cheerlead and champion, bitter Arctic cold, it just goes to show you that the rules of long-term forecasting, I think, are changing right in front of our eyes.
Yeah. What is a polar intrusion versus Arctic?
Well, polar is basically anything that's probably north of about 50 degrees latitude, Peg. Once you get north of the Arctic Circle, that would be an Arctic intrusion. So in other words, like the stuff that we have over us today and what we had over us yesterday, if you noticed, we had some nice sunshine, but that was due to the fact that we had polar air moving down the length of Lake Michigan, and that dried us out. So when people say, oh my God, winters in Chicago are terrible, actually they're not, as long as you have some sunshine. What we have over us now is kind of a blend of a little bit of Pacific air and polar air, and that's why it's been so cloudy. So if you get one of these normal polar intrusions of air, you'll get sunshine and temperatures in the 20s. When you have the Arctic air, that's the stuff when you step outside, the nose hairs get kind of crinkly or at least hurt a little bit. The eyebrows get a little crinkly and you hear the snow crunch under your feet. So there's nothing in the way of any Arctic air coming at us probably until maybe sometime next Friday or Saturday at this point.
You mentioned something just a second ago about how some meteorologists were expecting the break off of the flow and it didn't, and so that's how things are changing. How do you think they're changing?
Um, when you say how do you think they're changing, you mean the forecast or the
Well,
act of the physical parts of the atmosphere?
I guess you well, I don't remember the exact phrase you used, but it seemed kind of
I think what you're referring to, Mike, is I said the rules of the game of long-term forecasting are changing. I think
that's what I
that's
meant.
yeah.
Okay. So
Yeah.
how is that?
So in regards to that, um, if you generally tend to say, strong La Nina, split of the polar, of the polar vortex, Arctic air in 2.5 to 3 weeks, that's not happening. And I think part of it is due to the fact that we continue to have this mild flow of air in off the Pacific Ocean, and that generally continues to push in, zonal flow. Now you got to be careful here because people will say, "I just heard of, the biggest snowstorm in years has hit Central," which is true. So what happens is there's a very high amplitude wave of energy moving across the Atlantic Ocean, which has been dipping down over Western Europe. I think last week we talked about Western Europe being very cold, and there has been some very cold air, basically over most of Europe, particularly Western Europe, for the last 10 days or so. So all you got to do is get underneath one of these things, and it makes all of a sudden winter come back very, very quickly. But the bottom line is, when you look at the overall regime of the polar vortex, the one that circumnavigates the entire northern hemisphere, it just doesn't look like something that shows really super cold Arctic air. And if you're going to get it, this is the time of the year, basically the middle to latter half of the month of January.
Hmm. Okay. Something else you sent us, which we kind of knew about and we've been following on this show for a couple of years, is the Trump administration reversing more than 100 environmental.
Yeah.
Wait, I got to say it like Bill Curtis, environmental. And there's a list there. And what I was
Including Arctic drilling that got buried in last week's news.
Yeah, a lot of things have got buried, like winning seats in Georgia and giving, the Democratically carte blanche to do anything they want over the next 2 years, which Bernie Sanders reminded us. But yeah, Mike, it's important to point out that a lot of those regulations that the Trump administration tried to reverse are still in court, and most likely beginning Thursday after the inauguration, all those are basically going to be dismissed and are not going to be challenged anymore because obviously we have, a new administration there. But it also shows you that there's a desire from Republicans and particularly to overturn something in the sake of corporate profits. I mean, that's been the case for years, and hopefully that's not going to continue, even if, say, there's some sort of cataclysmic change in the electoral standings of the Democrats come 2022, because that's everybody's thinking, is whether or not there's going to be a rebound after this past rebound. But the bottom line is, there's nothing better than having someone in the White House and someone like a John Kerry or a Gina McCarthy saying, no, not so fast. And if you really have some perspective, just Google Bill Maher's show from January 20th, 2017. That was the Friday after the inauguration. And literally you had people on the panel talking about all the things that could possibly change and could happen over the next 4 years. And they all did. And thankfully, the voters back in 2018 and now obviously here in 2020 have said enough is enough. So we're hoping that and most of those regulations that have been overturned are either going to be stopped in the courts or are going to be, quote, re-reversed, if that's a word that I can use on the air.
Yeah.
Well, some people say that it's going to be more difficult than that, and I think one of the horrible problems that the Biden administration is going to be facing coming in is the gutting of these. The EPA, a lot of the scientists and their work has been.
They've left.
Yeah,
Gone.
some of them have left, and
Yeah.
they're going to have to repopulate that, and the morale has to be rock bottom right now.
Yeah, it is. And I know someone who is an adjunct professor at Oakton, who works for the EPA downtown. And that's basically exactly what he's been echoing, Mike and Peg, is how the morale has been pushed so far down. It's hard to see how it's going to rebound. And the fact that Biden has been basically blocked from having a smooth transition since November 4th has probably made it a lot more difficult. But it's, people, talked about on the other side about having someone like Biden, in office is terrible. But he's been basically our president for the last week, if anybody has really noticed. So the fact that we have someone who knows Washington and can pick things up really, really quickly, I think is really helpful. If this would have been Obama coming into office, I think the uphill climb would have been much, much more difficult. But I think Biden, with a lot of his connections, and he does tend to work across the aisle pretty well, I think it's going to turn around pretty fast.
I'm not going to make you comment on this because it's something that I want to send you, but I was kind of stopped in my tracks when I saw this headline from Inside Climate News just the other day. It was January 3rd, so it was a week ago. Here's the headline. Many scientists now say global warming could stop relatively quickly after emissions go to zero. That's one of the several recent conclusions about climate change that came more sharply into focus in 2020. Now, this is not what we've been told for forever, pretty much. So
that's a big if. I mean, emissions going to zero is probably never going to happen.
But take a look at the article. Maybe talk about it another week.
Sure.
I mean that means all of a sudden we're not going to have airplanes or trains or buses that run on combustible engines. That's not going to happen anytime soon. And I tell my students that. I mean, I know that there's people in the academia hierarchy that say we have to get to zero, and I'm like, do you realize what you're going to be doing to the American economy by doing that? You have to work your way gradually towards that. But to say it's going to happen, it's like telling people that you don't give a damn about climate change, and the people who do are going to go no. So you got to be really careful. You got to be able to kind of toe the line and toe it on both sides, because clearly we realize that as much as the people listening to this program hate the outgoing president, there were 75 million people that voted for him, and 8 million more than the last election. So you have to be able to move forward, but also appease both sides. And that's kind of difficult. And it's probably become more difficult in the last 1 or 2 years. There's a lot of shedding of old thoughts due to conspiracy theories that have to happen. And that doesn't happen by knocking people over the head with a sign. That happens with pointing out fact over fiction. And that comes with education. And hopefully people have the wherewithal to go, yeah, you know what? I guess you are kind of right. And that number I still think is pretty high from the people going, I don't really care what you say.
On the other hand, I'll give you this last bit before you do a forecast. I just read yesterday that Massachusetts plans to phase out gasoline-fueled cars by 2035. That is a Republican governor who has that plan in Massachusetts. So go figure.
So what do? You get to the you get to the toll booth and they go, sorry, you can't come in.
Well, I don't know about. I don't know. That's a really interesting point. I imagine you pay a really big fee.
Probably sale of new cars.
It's quite
probably the sale of new cars. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to go in that direction. It's interesting to point out that we've probably are going to see, and I know you and Peg have talked about this, lower emissions due to the pandemic. But those emissions will probably come back only because we probably have, a lot more people all of a sudden driving with, during the next, 9 to 12 months. So I wouldn't be surprised if 2021 peaks a little bit, but we have to go back to making sure that we, remain intact with the emission regulations that the Obama administration, put out, and then Trump quickly wanted to get rid of. Now, it's important to note that right after President Trump lost the election on November 3rd, both GM and I forget the other car maker in the United States said, we don't plan to go that route. So they were literally waiting for the election to basically bear the truth of the fact that even though the president wanted those, emission regulations dumped, they were never going to go that direction because they know that they'll get killed because the foreign markets already have much, much more cleaner and more efficient automobiles. So it wasn't what they were going to do to help Trump. It was what they were going to do to help the bottom line. And I think logic won out at that point.
Yeah, I mean, all they have to do, you're right. All they have to do is look overseas and go, oh, we're dead. We're dead in the water.
Yeah. Oh, I want something that gets 17 as opposed to 25. I love 17 miles per gallon. Really? Just because it says Ford on it? I don't think so.
Well, all right.
And as one of our listeners pointed out real quick, zero emissions also means all buildings, manufacturing, etc., net zero. And we're a long way from that.
And real quickly, Peg, on top of that, if you're going to go zero emissions, that means you have to increase your electricity. And the only way we get electricity is to then increase coal. So you got to be really careful about saying we're gonna decrease, emissions through fossil fuels, particularly oil. But in this country, we get a lot of electricity from coal. So you got to be really careful about saying those kind of things there. And by the way, before we get into a forecast, when I think about school, I hope that the congressmen and the senators now realize how frightful it is to all of a sudden in the middle of, quote, a lesson, have to hide under your desks. Think about how many kids in schools, think about how many kids in schools have had to hide under their desk or at least go through some sort of a routine, not just a fire drill, but kids, this is how we protect ourselves when deranged people enter our building.
Well,
I
and
hope
teachers,
that they're thinking about stuff like that.
And teachers as well, obviously. Well, no, I'm
Trust
serious.
me, I've been there. I've been there for 3 years now about what to do when someone enters my classroom. They're no longer building classrooms with one door. They all have two doors in case someone comes in one. We run out the back, or there's a code that I hit on the computer keyboard. It's like that's where we've gone, and now we've basically done that with the U.S. Capitol. So I hope the congressmen and the senators are kind of thinking about that.
Well,
that's my thoughts for the week.
Yeah, no, I got you. And we just got a comment came in. It says, "I am frightened for America. Tensions are escalating." That's one of our viewers right now, and he's a very reasonable guy. I know who that is. Who just sent that in, and I'm hoping that we can tamp this down a little bit, but it's going to be an interesting week and a half, isn't it?
Yeah, let's just hope that we can either get a snowstorm or some Arctic cold over the White House.
Yes.
Or over Washington, D.C. on January 20th to push the inauguration indoors. Right now, I don't think that's going to happen. So it would have been nice if Mother Nature would have helped out a little bit, just like it did back in 1985 when President Reagan took his second oath of office indoors because the afternoon temperature was 7 degrees Fahrenheit. That's
Yikes.
Cold.
Yeah, it is.
Any way you slice it. All right, so the forecast then, guys, clearly it's cloudy, if I can say that. 34, 35 will be the high. Normal high for the coldest week of the year is 30. Normal low is 17. What I find nice about this time of the year is every day the sun is setting at about 1.5 minutes later.
Mm-hmm.
Sunset is now 4:40. Yeah, almost 28 minutes longer than what it was a month ago. Yeah, there's a ding for that.
I've definitely noticed
sunset. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you have, Peg. But overall, guys, between probably Wednesday, we'll see high temperatures about 35 to 38 degrees. That's about 5 degrees above normal. Nothing in the way of any Arctic cold coming back at us. Could be a little bit of snow around here on Thursday night into Friday. But on Thursday, it looks like it now may be rain. So a high of 35 on Tuesday, 35 on Wednesday, 35 on Thursday, and maybe 20s on Friday and Saturday with overnight lows down into the single digits. But when we talk again next Sunday, we'll see how well that polar vortex over the North Pole is splitting or not splitting, and we'll see what happens with that.
All right. Hey, I don't need it. I don't know if anybody else does, but it's okay to keep the cold in Siberia right now. It's fine with me.
My electric bill appreciates it staying up there.
Yeah, I've been looking at that too and thinking, okay, it's not even fair to have it this warm, but that's okay. That's okay with us. Rick, thanks so much. You have a great week. We'll talk to you next week.
Take care, Mike and Beck.
Bye-bye. There we go. And that sort of wraps things up for the show. You got anything? Wait, before we go ahead.
I was just going to mention we're talking about regulations and Arctic drilling sneaking through and that some of the leases actually did go through. But there was some good news too, like the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative being re-signed.
You know what?
So
Here's what we need to do. Schedule for the show that and the fact that Illinois and Michigan came to an agreement this week about preventing Asian carp. And when's the last time we talked about Asian carp on this show?
It's been a while, yeah.
Been a long time. And the thing about that is I was reading the results of their agreement last night. And they're saying, great, now we can begin to design something. I'm like, are you kidding
Preliminary.
me? We've been talking about this for a dozen years, and the threat has been there, although they have now apparently 3 barriers along the way. They're going to put another one temporary in 2021 this year. But my feeling is you're going to begin to design something to keep Asian carp out of Lake Michigan now? I mean, great. I'm glad you're going to do something finally, because you know why? We've got Democratic governors in both states, Michigan and Illinois. But my goodness, this has been a threat for so long. So anyway, that's what we need to discuss on the show, and we can fold it into greater works of what's happening with the Great Lake agreement, and something that we might bring up at the same time.
Albatross! Albatross! Albatross!
We haven't played that either. So with that, it's time to say
Time
goodbye.
to move on.
Yeah, thanks to everybody on the show today. Ariel Pressman and Alex Zuck and Meggie Carides, Rick DiMaio with the weather and climate information. Kayla was not with us, but Kathleen was, so thank you, Kathleen.
Thanks, Kathleen.
As always, you get a ding, Kathleen. And, of course, Lagata and Basil the dog, who didn't bark very much. I didn't hear much today. Okay, until next time, go green or
go home.
Stadler?
What?
Is that it?
Yes, it's over. How'd you like it?
I don't know. I slept through the whole thing.
Well, you didn't miss much.